All right, yo, thank you very much for joining me, boys. We're having a first of the 0.2 patch BLASTCAST. This is going to be watchable on the Maxroll YouTube channel as well. So if you guys, can't watch everything or just want to catch up or want to like look back at some of the things that we discussed, you can always go check it out there. And yeah, thank you very much, Pal, for joining me, as well as Rax. So I just wanted you guys to introduce yourselves. So I'm Tuna. I stream every day, and sometimes once in a blue moon make a YouTube video for Path of Exile specifically. Love ARPGs and stuff. So, yep. What about you, Pal? What are you up to?
Yeah, I'm also streaming, YouTubing, playing all sorts of ARPGs. Right now it's Period 2. Currently playing a Shield Charge Poison Titan. And yeah, just playing freaky stuff, trying to learn the game. And going pretty well so far. Having a blast. How about you, Rex?
Hi guys, I'm Blue Hoodie Man. I play all the ARPGs. I usually make like beginner guides, get people into the games. What's up? I've been blasting PoE 2, now ready for Last Epoch this weekend. There's also a Torchlight race, No Rest for the Wicked at the end of the month. It's a good time to be an ARPG player.
Ooh, No Rest for the Wicked looks awesome
Almost
as well.
too good of a time right now. I don't even know what to play anymore.
Yeah. But with our focus on PoE 2 and 0.2 patch and like the fact that we've been basically blasting it now for an entire week, I did want to sort of ask you guys, like, how do you feel about this patch now that it's sort of, settled in a bit, this league patch, any things that you've particularly enjoyed, didn't like, or what's your experience so far anyways with 0.2?
My experience has been pretty bad at the start, but honestly, in the last few days, or like I should say 4 or 5 days now at this point, after the Zizran interview, they fixed so many small things, and they made rares visible in endgame, which made everything just feel so much better for me. That I'm actually at a point where I'm really enjoying PoE 2, and I already enjoyed theory crafting, so now endgame is pretty decent, and yeah, kind of feeling it right now.
Nice.
Yeah, I completely agree with Palstron, especially when he talks about a bunch of the little things. I mean, it's still early access. It's only the second major patch. I know a lot of people are really like doom and gloom right from the very start. I think the Zizran interview did a lot of things, but there aren't, I really don't know that many gaming companies anymore who within the first week are going to actually make like tons of significant changes directly based off of community feedback. I'm really not worried about Path of Exile 2 at all. I think by the time it releases, it's going to be a really good game. I don't know if I'm going to think it's going to be better than PoE 1, but I think it will be a different kind of game, and I think it's going to be really great.
Yeah. For me, I have to say that I think 0.2 was a massive miss in regards to what I was hoping to see in the game and what I was hoping for the future of Path of Exile 2. Though one thing that is a little bit heartening, or opposite of disheartening, I don't really know if that's the word, but one thing that is nice to see is the fact that they've sort of, because of this fallout, the community fallout, as well as people in general not liking early game whatsoever, is GGG has sort of opened the communication channels back up, which is nice to see, because good things always happen to PoE whenever they actually start to communicate with their community and understand things that we like, we don't like, or whatever like that. Though I do have to say that there might be some positives and negatives with communication being open, because to some extent I do feel like some of the changes that they make tend to sort of cater towards like, oh, let's just give them something now, and so they stop complaining or whatever, and they might have like maybe long-term at first effects on the video game, which are either positive or negative depending on who you ask. But for example, a change that is coming to the game is which is very positive, is ascendancy respecs, which is one of the great things that the community has sort of like really been hammering GGG for. So there is definitely a lot of really good things that have been coming into the game. But I did want to ask you if there's like a feature, like for example, something that you would love for them to just like, snap in game right now. Like what would it be?
Because we just talked about this, because Rex said something interesting. We're just gonna take this real quick, because I think it's interesting because we have the PoE 1 community and like a lot of the new community basically forming the new PoE 2 community. And PoE 1 players have been drilled to kind of give their feedback in the first week, right? So you have this weird dynamic where we're very vocal with feedback, as Rax said, and that's out of the gates, right? Always. But that's kind of how we got trained to do it, because GGG puts out a lot of content, but can't test everything fully. and then in the first week, a lot of things usually get ironed out. That has been, I mean, since I can think, that has always been kind of like the MO, right? So
Yeah.
you have that kind of people who are just very vocal, but not really like. I mean, some people always go crazy and go too personal or whatever. But in general, I think that's a strong suit, and it's also a strong suit of GGG to respond to that
To
quickly enough.
respond. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
But yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say because Tuna was saying what I would want in the game. Honestly, the ascendancy has been, I mean, number one. That is literally everything I can dream of. But the other thing would be not just have Atlas, like whatever they want to do, bookmarks or whatever, but have like a top-down view to kind of know where you are. Because I'm having this problem like a lot now that I've been navigating for days, and I'm like, I don't even know where I am anymore. It is,
getting
and I
lost,
don't
yeah.
think bookmarks can help there. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, true.
I think the number one thing for me by a mile, and this wouldn't affect the SSF players, I understand, but I think we need an auction house. It's actually unbelievable. So I made two of the most popular classes in the beginning. I made a Lich and I made a Huntress. So I'm in the end game, and I'm not doing any big trades. I'm buying like the intro uniques or some very basic yellows. And what happens? So if I want to buy like one of the like more common like starter uniques, and they're up for maybe like 3 exalts, the usernames on the right are different all the time. Like they're not the same username, but I message it and it's always like the same Chinese person. It's so weird. It's always the same person because you can see it's the same. It's like, and they never respond. And the experience there is so unbelievably bad. What we need is something like World of Warcraft, where someone just lists the price or lists the item for a certain price, and then you just buy it. Anybody who is actually engaging with trade, not having it there and having like the Chinese gold farmers or whatever the hell it is that they're doing over there, it's actually really, it's not even like ruining the economy. It's ruining the experience of trading entirely. I think they have to concede on this and put it in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been fighting that fight in PoE1 for a long time, so I wonder. I hope so. I hope with a lot of new, fresh perspectives. Maybe we'll get it at some point. Yeah, would be cool.
Yeah, I think auction houses opens a can of worms for the developers that they're afraid to open, because it's also one of those things that once they implement it to the game, they'd never be able to get rid of it. The player base would never let them live that down. But so I can see both sides. I definitely think from the player perspective, like there needs to be an auction house in the game, like there has to be. And from the developer's perspective, for them, it's just figuring out how do they make it so it's not completely like, because the player base of Path of Exile, I think, is one of the most like tech savvy and also just savvy in general player bases of any video game I've ever experienced. And people will learn to abuse and break and do some crazy stuff to the economy with it. But we have sort of seen that a little bit with the current exchange. And I feel like that's a testing ground for grinding gear games to figure out where they want to position themselves for the future of like PoE trading. And judging by the interviews, by the way, like by how he responds to trading questions, I don't think that's something that's very likely to happen in the future. But I mean, if people complain enough, I feel like maybe they will, maybe they will. So
I think looking at all the interviews, what happened was Jonathan wanted to make a full auction house because people were asking for it, and it's a new game. And then they implemented in PoE1 the settlers, the vendor, right, for just currency, and everybody was so happy. And he kind of like thought, okay, now we can kind of implement this and just leave it at that, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
So let's hope. Yeah.
I'm sure the auction house comes with additional challenges besides just giving the players what they want. As you said, like there's technical issues if it doesn't work, yada yada yada. I mean, grinding gear games to me has demonstrated an extreme level of skill in implementing these things. Like when the currency exchange first came out, I was like, well, this is our first try. It could be pretty garbage. And they made some minor changes pretty quickly, but I thought it was absolutely fantastic. But like I've talked to Blizzard before about Diablo 3, and it was like a similar argument that Crouching Tuna brought up with some of the changes that they wanted to make. They're like, well, there's a lot of cheaters in our game, and if we do X, Y, or Z, then the cheaters can do more things. And I remember one time in one of the meetings, I literally sat back in my chair and I said, guys, do you guys hold back features that are good for the masses just because what the cheaters do in your game? I'm sorry, like you've got to figure it out. But you got to figure it out, and you have to implement these awesome features for your players who are playing legitimately. Just ban them or do your research and get rid of them or something. But the currently whenever this happens to me on stream, when I whisper 15 people, it's the same Chinese guy over and over and over. No one actually is there to make the trade. And where if it was an auction house, you just list it, you just buy it, goes through mailbox, whatever. Everyone in my chat is spamming. That's exactly what happens to me, Rax. It's exactly that. I've given up on trade. Why am I even playing trade? Yada yada yada.
What happens to everyone? And like experienced Path of Exile players, you know, what we do is we just like whisper 3 pages. You know, that's the difference between like new players and experienced players. Is the experienced players just brush it off? They just click whisper on 3 pages until they get really limited, and then we end up getting like 30 invites at the same time. And we click one of them, and then off we go. Which is like, it might seem like so obscene to somebody who's not used to this kind of stuff, because like it seems like weird. You know, you send a request and you have to respect getting it. But like we just learned to just, you know, just go through and just hope for the best, which is like really unfortunate.
Yeah, just like
it's not good content, as you said, and GGG are sort of taking it out on their player base because of the fact that cheaters exist. Instead of actually employing people to take out cheaters, they will instead punish the masses for the fact that cheaters exist, which is always going to result in bad gameplay. So I 100% agree with that.
It kind of reminds me of Torchlight, which has the tax, right, on selling. Basically, what they had is they had so many flippers. They said every 8th Flame Elementium that you earn is going to get taxed. So what happens is flippers are still making an obscene amount of money, and people who want to reroll characters are just getting punished, right?
That's
so
terrible
it's like
system, yeah.
It is exactly like you said, Rex. It's basically, you can't really just not implement it. You just have to implement it and then iterate upon it, right? Like that's what you do.
Definitely, yeah. Like the skeptic in me feels like, so for example, you were using Blizzard as an example. Like I had like the same thing was happening in WoW and stuff, where it just feels like do you guys just not want to employ people to take out cheaters? Is that the issue? Like is that really the issue? Because every game I play has like a cheating problem, and it seems like the devs are just not willing to really put time into like banning those cheaters as much as like other things. Because I feel like banning cheaters is like also a feature in that it makes the game better for everybody else. Like the economy's better. It means that they can implement like better trading systems like auction houses and stuff like that. So I feel like it should be treated just like any other part of game development, right? So not seeing that really be prevalent is a bit disappointing for sure.
I think one of the issues with it is just the difficulty in doing so, right? So like Crouching Tuna said earlier, the player base right now, like stopping cheaters in 2005 and WoW Classic is completely different from stopping cheaters in 2025. Their methods, their programs, their dual PC setups, you know, like I'm not really well versed in the cheating universe, but I know of some people that cheat all the time, and it's just like, uh, how exactly do you even do it? It would be, as Crouching Tuna alludes to, it would be at least like a full-time job for somebody, and it would never be perfect. Again, kind of like Palstron said, yeah, iteratively, you got to do something. You just got to try your best. You just have to at least at the baseline catch the biggest offenders. But I think another thing is I think a lot of people don't care if there are certain people flipping items. I mean, people do it in IRL as well. Like that doesn't impact, you know, the casual Jim Bob that just wants to make 1 or 2 trades. As long as the 1 or 2 trades that they make for the league are successful, they could care less if someone's making 1,000 divines a day flipping some obscure thing that they didn't even trade anyway.
I agree. I think like I don't necessarily feel like flippers is the problem here. I think being a flipper is like a totally fine sort of like way to play the game if that's what you enjoy. You enjoy playing the economy aspect or whatever. I think the problem is like if you're a flipper that then sells the currency, right? Like I think like hating on flippers is like weird, but if you're a flipper that then like is like you know basically like breaking the rules, that's the real problem here, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think you should just deter, like they just with the ritual exploit, right? Ban
Yeah,
300 people. Those kind of things should happen frequently to just deter people. And honestly, I'm sure there's like a certain amount of people who would then stop, right? And that's just what it is because they want to
exactly.
play the game.
Well, that's exactly right. It's because like the fact that it's so rampant that it sort of like shows people that like, oh, you can do this, and then the fact that there is an avenue for people to make real life money from flipping, that means that more people will flip, and it exacerbates the issue, and it just gets worse and worse. And that's kind of like, yeah, it needs to sort of be in check, right? But yeah, I mean that's kind of a can of worms that we open with this conversation in regards to the trade house, which is actually probably what GGG is thinking about when they say like we don't want to trade house. So it
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me actually. But so like just to get us back on topic a little bit, a feature for me that I would love to see in Path of Exile 2, like for me it's a bit more like a bit more philosophical, but like one thing for me that I don't feel currently is that I do feel in Path of Exile 1 is I don't feel like when I get to endgame I'm going through a progression system that rewards me for progressing, and it kind of just feels like I'm just putting maps in. And yeah, and I don't know why that's the case, but yeah, so like endgame mapping for me just feels a bit pointless and boring unfortunately
Can
at
I
the
just real
moment.
quickly, sorry to interrupt, Rex, you're still online on YouTube.
I know. I just saw that, and
Okay,
they're just staring at me. I was like, I could cut them off, and I'm just like, they already think that they're sneakily over there watching me, like creeping around the corner. I'm like, I'll just let it go.
okay, gotcha. Yeah, no, I don't know. So you're basically saying you don't really feel like a progression in endgame. What do you mean by that, Tuna? You don't feel like
Yeah,
there's any goals to work towards,
so
or
to give a parallel to Path of Exile 1, so you get to maps, you're really weak, you progress your atlas, every extra map that you complete gives you a point, every point gets you closer to what you want to farm, which is like I have agency in what I want to farm, and I have progression in how to get there. So it's like a multifaceted sort of like two things going on at once that are balancing each other. And as I'm progressing, I'm getting stronger, my character is getting stronger, my strats are getting stronger, getting more points, I'm seeing more of everything, and I just feel that, right? So I'm getting more currency, I'm able to invest more in my character, and I'm getting to farm more of what I want, and it's sort of just like keeps growing and growing and growing. And then as you get into endgame, then you unlock scarabs, kind of like because of the fact that you just have this excess currency through progressing, um, so on and so forth, right? But in Path of Exile 2, it doesn't feel like the Alice passive nodes are impactful enough to where I can sort of like feel that. All I see is just more like yellow skulls on my screen, and yes, their chance of dropping loot does increase because there is more of them, but I feel more progression in endgame getting rarity on my gear than I do with Alice progression, right? Because I just see more stuff on the floor, I see more tiered items, I see more exalted orbs. So it just doesn't feel like it has that sort of like progression, me getting stronger, tied in with my strats getting better, content getting harder, and monster dropping more stuff. It just sort of lacks that kind of like synergy and chemistry. If that makes sense.
it feels a lot more like a roguelike, right? Where you don't really have a strat, you're just kind of like cruising along, and then at some point you find like a tower set up where you're like, okay, I'm gonna throw some tablets in there, and then for example, there's new unique tablets where you can literally set up and just farm for a day because you can
Yeah,
repeat them. There's like that one
yeah.
tablet where you remove irradiate it and you can do the maps twice and whatnot. So it really feels weird. It feels awkward, and as you said, you can't choose your layout. So now you're farming Breach, and some of your layouts are just awkward for Breach. You're
Yeah,
farming Expedition, some of your layouts are awkward for Expedition. And if you want to farm Ritual, you don't want maps that are super spread out. You want to just find your rituals. So it is really awkward. I feel like that you can't control the kind of zones that you farm, which is, I think, the biggest thing about versus PoE 1, for example, where you strats are literally revolving around a certain layout, and it's like, I don't know, you don't really have that in PoE 2, and I agree. I just personally, I just don't look for that in PoE 2 because, like you said, that's not really there. I feel like with the new unique maps, there's at least a little bit something to look forward to, and I feel like it's like the first spark in a direction. Like if they just add and add and add and add, at some point we're gonna go out on the other side and it's gonna be good, but it's going to be, I think, completely different from PoE 1. Like there's never gonna be anything like that, and I don't
Yeah.
know.
Though to add to that, I think for me, it would never sort of. I mean, I don't want to say never say never, right? But like, it will never feel the same because in Path of Exile 1, I choose what I want to do. Like I'm in a sandbox and I'm
Yeah.
I'm choosing. Whereas in Path of Exile 2, you're kind of just like, revealing fog and hoping that the developers serve you your strat. Does that make sense? And
Yeah,
that's
agency, yeah.
yeah, and I it just doesn't do it for me in comparison. How do you feel about that, Rex?
Yeah, so to hit on two of the things that you said, one of the it's interesting because like last epoch brings up this topic as well, that they don't want you to sit in your hideout for 30 minutes like crafting the end game that you're about to play. So they have this new system with the woven echoes. We'll try it coming up this week. I have heard from people that have tried it that it's really really fun. But to me, like if I had the choice of just walking forward through fog and hoping for the best versus me sitting there and crafting how my entire afternoon is going to go, I would way rather craft it.
Mm-hmm.
When people were describing it, they were acting like it was some huge evil thing. I the last time I fired it up and I was playing my Lich, when I in the direction that I wanted to go, the map ahead of me was Mire, and then I had to go to another map connected to it, and it was Mire. And I was just sitting there. I was like someone has to clip this. I have to do Mire for like the next 20 minutes. The thing for me, this is on the very first video that I ever made, like a big video giving feedback about PoE 2. It's like a tangent to what Tuna said that I think it not only works in PoE 1, I think it works in every game that you've ever implemented it in, and I call it the Pokemon system. You got to catch them all. When you're going through the beginning stages of Path of Exile 1, every map is valuable. You're looking for exactly, you're choosing, and what exactly are you going to run here or there. And every decision that you make can save you hours and hours, maybe even days of time in your progression. And finding all of those really awesome things just feels so good. The amount of people that like doing that versus the amount of people that don't like doing that is one of the only things that the community nearly universally agrees on. I'm very surprised that in PoE 2's endgame design, they're kind of moving away from that. It's kind of just wander forward and hope that you hit either some unique maps that kind of gives you the feeling, as Palstron said, or you just hope for these nexuses that you can just keep leveling up one by one by one. But to me, the agency isn't there, and it's way less fun than the Pokemon system that they had in PoE 1.
Yeah.
I agree. So what you're basically saying is, for example, if you did the Mire for the first time, something would happen, and then whenever you see a new layout, you would, for example, get like a point or something. Is that what you kind of mean with gotta catch it, or like an example of what you mean?
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
right now, if I run into a mire, it's just misery. I'm never happy to see a mire. I don't really have a way to get around it unless I have to change my own strategy. In PoE 1, I know exactly how many times I'm going to run mire. One time, and I'm never going to run it ever again. You know what I mean? And when I find it, even the map that I hate, I'm happy because I need
Exactly.
this. I need one of these. And I don't mind running it because I only have to do it once and I'll never see it again. It's all those combining factors just make it worse to go through.
Yeah. They're not really letting you choose your own journey. It's an interesting idea somebody in my chat had. For example, like a horizon orb, like you would have in PoE 1, where you can basically reroll whatever next layout would come. That would already
Yeah.
be a good idea, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
I mean, there's like 100 different solutions for the issue,
But-
right? But I feel like
Honest,
it's nice to see that like at least the sentiment is shared across the community. I think your point of view is on like, you know, catching it, completing it, feeling proud about having it, and not worrying about it anymore is like, yeah, I think a lot of people could agree with that. Sorry, go on. What do you?
the one thing I don't really understand why not more people are talking about is what I said earlier. And I know some people talk about it, but I don't know why not everybody is crazy about this. Is like, you don't know where you are on the Atlas. It makes me nervous. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it like, I hate it. I want like a Civ top down or whatever you need to do, right? To make this more, I want to know where I am, where I go. If I had a unique map 2 days ago that I didn't want to do for whatever reason, I don't need a half an hour to find it again, right? Stuff like that. It is insane.
Yeah, I
It is
literally just had
like,
that issue. Like just now on stream, I was like, "Yo, I left behind like 5 of those castaway maps for gold. I'm just gonna go back and like do them." And then I found 2, and then I can't find the others. And I'm just like, "Yeah, I can't be bothered anymore. I'll just go do something else." But I mean, like that's
Well, like,
an issue that
you did a
seems very
tower setup,
solvable.
right? You did a tower setup, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna come back to this later, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, where was that again? It's like no idea, no clue. And I don't think tabs would really change that all that much. It would top down would be so nice. Also, I don't know. Maybe this is obviously super subjective, but I hate how it looks as well. I think it just looks so. I don't know. It looks cheap. I would really like
Really?
like a more simplified layout rather than
Fair
this
enough.
like
More of like
drawn
a
kind
like
of.
less than a rendered. You'd like a more like drawn or artistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like an atlas. Like,
Yeah, but that's
yeah,
like, I mean, that's like super subjective, obviously.
yeah,
So,
I get that.
so there's, I think, an additional problem with something that Palsteron brought up with PoE2's system. So you're progressing through to T15. Let's say you're halfway done. You're on T8, and you find like these maps that are pretty good. You find some towers, and you juice it up. Now, what are you going to do? So you've got 2 choices. So obviously, like what the most efficient players will do probably is you just keep progressing your Atlas to T15, and then you come back. That's kind of the logical thing to do, right? Like you want to, if you get this really nice setup, you save it for when you're really powerful, and then you go do it. But the problem is that's separating 2 ideas. It's separating juicing with progression. Path of Exile 1 does exactly the opposite. It constantly forces you to juice more while you progress. So you do the T1 maps, your gear sucks. It is in PoE 1. Your gear sucks. You make it blue, you can barely do it. Then you have to do yellow for the mid-tier maps, and then you have to make them yellow and corrupt it, and then you're just trying to block like some really crazy hard modifiers, and you're getting more loot, you're getting more gear, and you're progressing simultaneously. A lot of people who play this game, especially with how difficult the campaign is for them and how long the campaign will be, they won't have the option of, let's set up this beautiful tower setup and then I'll just come back later and do it while I go progress. They're just not going to get that far. That'll be the vast majority of the player base. So, like, separating those 2 things, I think actually hurts a lot of players. Whereas in PoE 1, you're doing this pretty much both of them all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that also doesn't help with progression, I feel like you just touched on it, is for me, tier 1 maps in PoE 2 don't feel that much easier than tier 15 maps. Like, I league started and I got into maps and I was like, I didn't remember because I know this was similar in 0.1, but I got to tier 1 maps and I was like, oh, I'm just going to do the Nexus, right, as we go. Like tier 1 maps into tier 2, into tier 3 or whatever. And I realized, no, I can literally already do tier 13 maps. And I know my build was good. This is not like the brag kind of thing. A lot of other people have said the same. It's like, I don't feel the difference really. And in PoE 1, like if you go from white to yellow map to red maps, it's like, what the hell? Like, what? You have no chance, right? You're going to get one shot. Yeah, you get one shot. And in PoE 2, I don't even feel the difference. And I just started doing like tier 13 maps immediately. And it gives me like 5 times XP. And it's just like, where's the progression? Right?
Yeah, so I was just gonna say like the difference between T1 and T16 maps in Path of Exile 1, it's like I don't know
Insane.
the numbers, but it's crazy. Like your character is just so much weaker when you enter T1. In
And the
Path of
map
Exile 2, you
modifiers
don't.
scale as
Yeah,
well.
and the map modify everything, obviously. Yeah, like it goes crazy. Like whereas in PoE2 you don't really feel that. And this kind of like it's almost like we had this discussion internally at Max Roll before deciding whether we wanted to have like league starters or not. My idea was like, oh, just make them go to T15. Some people were like, oh, so you want like a leveling build to go to T15s? And in my brain, I was thinking like, yeah, what's the difference between like T1s and 15s? Like if you can make it to maps, you can make it a 15, right? And that's exactly what it feels like right now, where the progression in the campaign is the hard part, and then at maps it just accelerates you to T15s like super fast. It doesn't feel like it's necessarily like so insanely harder, and it just doesn't feel like you're really progressing through the end game as you
I think
as
what
you
it
would.
is, I think what it is as well is you get out of campaign at level 14 skills, and then if you keep progressing, you're never gonna get more than like 15 normal. But if you just do it to 13, 14, immediately you have like level 18, and now you also get
Right.
stronger, right? So you
True.
adjust to the difficulty immediately. You get way better gear, which I also don't feel like is the same in PoE1. So yeah, the progression right now I feel like is a little bit weird.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I think it's what Palstron said there at the end of why that happens. So when you move from the campaign to the end game, a lot of the power that you get is front loaded, right? You get like the cheap uniques, or you chance it up. You get some basic gear that caps your resistances and has one stat that you're looking for. And then you level up your, it's very easy to level up your skill gems like 3 or 4 times pretty quickly after running a couple of maps. And then you just got a huge power boost, and the monsters are not tuned to increase very much from the 1 to 15 journey. So it's very front loaded, which is maybe not the worst thing, because PoE2 is a little bit more, even though it's a more difficult game in some aspects, it's good for the masses that you get your rewards in the beginning. But yeah, it definitely feels very different from PoE1, where I'm genuinely afraid of, like, I'll get way stronger, but I'm still genuinely afraid when I finally get to red maps, because this is going to be very
Rough.
difficult. I feel the opposite. Like going in from the campaign in the beginning when my skill gems are low and I don't have gear, that's like the highest danger. Once I start getting it, I could care less whether I'm in a T8 or a T15.
A weird thing there is as well. You will. I mean, one thing I will say is it does get more dangerous in terms of like enemy damage. So with certain builds, like tier 15s are like rippier. But then the next problem is okay. So you get the maps and you can one shot a tier 1 rare. You can probably one shot a tier 15 rare, but you might die a lot more in tier 15. So it feels weird that, for example, if you're on the bottom or ranger side of the tree, you don't have any defense, right? It's like armor right now is unplayable, so that maybe
Mm.
makes it feel even worse. But it's not like you can really prep for them all that much. Like you don't have life nodes to take. So it also feels weird in that sense that everything gets rippier. You're already one-shotting tier 15 mobs, but your defense just doesn't feel like it caught up yet because you don't have the levels yet, which is kind of the only way to get a lot of your life, right? So it's like it also feels awkward that way.
Yeah. I feel that. That's another issue where I feel like we could have a discussion about like defenses and what role they're currently at, like playing in Path of Exile 2 and how to build them and that sort of stuff. So I feel like defenses, they feel very binary in PoE2. It just feels kind of like you get what you're served. If you're like on the right side of the tree, you just go for like evasion ES. If you're on the top side, you get ES. If you're on the bottom, you get armor, which is like that's normal. But usually, uniques kind of like historically in the past. And I keep always referencing Path of Exile 1 because, of course, that's the only game that we can reference the same, right? But in Path of Exile 1, you unlock items that then completely flip upside down how you would build a character or a character's defenses, which at the moment in Path of Exile 2 we're kind of like lacking, right? So the question is like defenses and how they feel like it just doesn't feel like really we have an avenue for investing in them. So people are just really going hard on the offensive side, and that's why you're kind of seeing a lot of just builds that just get one shot because they just have no ways of realistically
Yeah.
doing anything aside for just getting a bunch of ES and evasion, right? Or armor or whatever else.
which also doesn't help the gameplay style they want, right? Where you're actually interacting with your environment, you're not gonna, right? Because if you're interacting in harder content, you're probably gonna die. I mean, there's a lot of issues. Like for example, the discrepancy between evasion and block. If you think about how easy it is to get 75% evasion versus getting 75 block, and you have to give up your shield slot and whatnot, it's like that is completely out of whack. Evasion is just insane in general. Energy shield is still incredible. Armor is non-existent, so there's like a million problems. You also have the fact that there's very little other defensive layers, so you don't have any of these build-defining defensive uniques or like timeless keystones or whatever that you actually have to build around, like big brain defensive setups. But that's something where I'd say that's gonna be added
come
with time. So
hopefully.
yeah, I don't. The armor's gonna get buffed as well, so I think it's gonna be fine in like, I don't know, a few months probably.
Hopefully.
That was the point I was going to make that Palstron made at the end. I feel exactly the way that Tunis says it is. I feel like it's very binary. If I'm going on my Lich, I go up. I take energy shield. On my Amazon, I go right. I'm already wearing a shield. I take evasion and block. That's what I do. I think this will get fixed over time. I'm not super worried about this. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. We've been crying about the armor formula. The only thing that really surprised me is usually grinding gear games sounds like they have a lot of like internal discussions on a lot of different topics based on the things that the community is talking about. And they made one comment in one of the recent interviews where they were like, yeah, we haven't really looked at the actual armor formula yet. We're going to like completely redo it. I was like, wow, you didn't see like all the videos that came out about armor? There's so many of them. It's like they didn't have a chance to rediscuss the formula yet, but at the same time, I think that they will. I think they'll get it closer. Like you could maybe argue it's a little bit closer this patch because last patch Energy Shield with Grim Feast was a billion times better than everything else. So I guess we're stepping in the right direction, but I guess building defenses is not like a mental exercise currently. It's just you take what's in front of you and that's what you get.
Yeah.
For
I mean,
sure.
Warrior still feels weird because you kind of have to. I mean, you don't. I'll say this: Smith of Kitava gave you a new Band-Aid solution where you're basically, I go Smith, I can now not go Evasion or Energy Shield. But if you're, for example, a Titan, you have to think about what you're doing. I know because I'm playing it right now, and it's like, yeah, you have
You're
to
the
like
warrior
invest into
god.
block, and you have to maybe even dip a little bit into evasion. And the funny thing is, I'm literally investing 2 passive points and like a few item bases that I would do anyways, and I have 60% evasion, and it's like,
Yeah,
what?
it's really nice. Yeah, evasion so OP.
Yeah, I don't know. So you go to the right side, you go to the left side to energy shield, and that's kind of what you do as a warrior right now. And honestly, if they make armor good, I think warrior will be absolutely amazing.
Very
Like it is
strong.
already obviously good, but like the armor nodes right there, like if armor is good, those armor nodes are super premium. Like there's really good notables, like the crit one, for example. Oh my god, like it's gonna be mayhem. Yeah.
One thing that I actually like, that Rax mentioned that kind of like resonated with me is the fact that recently it does feel like grinding gear games, of course, outside of like the recent fallout and their response, it does feel like grinding gear games is taking the approach of being totally disconnected from the community, and it feels like to me like it just feels like them having more involvement with the community is the reason why we've been seeing positive change coming into the game and that kind of stuff. Though my sort of like point here would be that I would love to see more community involvement from grinding gear games, but like have a more like proactive approach towards it as opposed to like, you know, like doing stuff and then people complain and then we post solve it, because like it also puts Jonathan on the spot, which I don't think is real, like
Yeah.
is good for like Jonathan's mental and the future of the game. Because as you saw, like at the beginning of the Ziz interview, he was nothing but resentful towards both Ziz and I feel like a lot of the community sentiment.
Defensive, I feel like, yeah. Defensive.
Right, which is like it's sort of like, but like the complaints and all this kind of stuff comes from a place of passion. And I know there is, of course, a lot of like people who take it way too far, which is like those people should be like shunned from the community in general. Like we want feedback, we don't want any sort of like insults or anything like that, right? But how do you guys feel like and especially Rax. How do you feel like Grinding Gear Games is doing in regards to community management from in comparison to like experiences that you've had in the past dealing with other developers?
I'll be honest with you, and maybe my answer might shock you. I think they're actually doing a pretty great job on the Jonathan thing specifically. I think, I mean, he kind indirectly by his own admission at the end of the interview said like he woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. I'm guessing those guys aren't getting a lot of sleep. I'm sure that
Mm.
they have the pressure of the world on their hands. And, everybody always jokes about the vision. One thing about the quote unquote vision is I think it's absolutely incredible that gaming developers feel very passionately that they want to make a game and they want to make it run like this. For example, by their own admission in Diablo 4 has had an identity crisis. And I think that more than anything has held it back. It's the change of leadership, it's the change of ideas too many times. That also doesn't work. But you also can't be closed minded toward the community. As Tuna said, when the passionate people come in and they want to give you feedback, you've got to be able to listen. But Jonathan is not a robot, as far as I know. I've never talked to him. I've never met him, but he's a person too, and I bet 95% of the people in his shoes would be feeling the pressure and would be feeling like some negativity. So I'll be honest with you, maybe I shouldn't do this. So I just in my personal opinion, I give him a full pass for that. It's fine. I would much rather see interviews kind of like respectfully dueling each other than just an echo chamber blindly agreeing with everything.
Yeah,
And I mean,
100%.
Grinding Gear Games has implemented a lot of changes within the first week that are actually impacting people right now. Like, is going through the campaign and cutting every monster 25%, is that an elegant long-term solution? I mean, probably not, but a lot of people logged in and said, well, I couldn't kill the Act 2 boss, and now I killed her. So, or him, or whatever the hell it is. So they said, all right, now I'm progressing through. It's an early access. I just want people to play the game and test it. And I actually kind of really believe in Grinding Gear Games. I think they usually get there compared to, I'm not even just picking on Blizzard, but a lot of the other gaming companies seem more closed off from the community. I agree with Tuna that the more that they engage and the more that they draw from the community, the better their game will be. But I actually don't think Grinding Gear Games is doing that bad of a job, if I'm being completely honest.
No, yeah,
Yeah, I feel like
I
I
agree.
feel like to your point, Tuna, as well is sure they should take the criticism because people are passionate about it. But at the same time, the fact that Jonathan was so defensive in the first half of the interview also shows his passion, right? On the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
end, so like
Don't
he
get me wrong,
wouldn't
I love
be.
Jonathan. Like
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
like a lot of people are like, oh, like, but I like sorry to interrupt you there, but there's one thing that like I think a lot of people saw negatively from what Jonathan said, and I think about it a lot because even though it comes like some people might disagree with Jonathan's vision, the fact that he said like he's trying to design a game that he wants to play is just shows just how passionate and how much he loves Path of Exile, right? Like he's trying to make the game that he would genuinely just be like, wasting his life on, which it might be going in a direction which a lot of people are not liking, but at the very least it shows his commitment and his love and his passion. So at the very least we know that's there. So yeah, sorry,
and
Pastor,
they have
go
a
on.
no, they have a rough chop, right? Like Reggie said, they have basically have two sides. I mean, it's kind of the same side, but they're saying two things at the same time. Why does this game even exist? And then why don't you take stuff from PoE1 that is better than what you currently have? Which both leads into the problem of it's just going to end up being PoE1, right? So why
Yeah.
does it exist? So they have to have a reason for the game to exist, and that's basically their vision, or however you want to call it. But then everybody's trying to steer them towards PoE1 because that's what we know, and that's what a lot of us enjoy already. And there has to be some pushback there because otherwise we're going to end up there again. And so I think there's going to be a lot more friction over the next year or so, and I think they're going to find like a lane where it makes sense. And for example, the end game right now I don't enjoy, but at the same time I cannot tell you how I would want the end game to be, other than make it like PoE1, which would also be the wrong answer because there is already a PoE1, right? So
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you what I want there. It's just that whenever they make certain changes, I'm like, oh, now it got better. So for example, the rare change on the minimap. For me, every map feels a third as big now because I don't have to hug the wall, go into crevices, and hope there's a rare there or whatever. That gave me such an upwind in endgame that I feel like if they make more and more of these changes, maybe we'll get somewhere, right?
Yeah. I mean, to add to sort of like maybe be a bit like playing devil's advocate to your point though, is people they can't know what they don't know, right? So it's kind of like you're putting like somebody in front of like 30 flavors of ice cream, but they know they like chocolate, they're gonna say chocolate, right? So that's why the community is saying make PoE1, right? Because
Yeah.
they just don't know, they don't have but what the developers need to translate is when people say make PoE1, what do they mean by that, right? Do they mean like make it more sandbox? Do they mean give us more agency? So that's why they're in game development and we're in the business of complaining, I suppose. Right?
I feel
So,
like
yeah,
I feel like their biggest trouble there is that they have learned so much over the years that they could implement into the game, but they also have to implement it in a
yeah,
different way than they have in the past because of PoE1, right? And they want it to be different. So it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe a singer that has a certain style of singing, but you don't want it to be repetitive over and over. So you have to kind of mix it up, and now you have to apply your skills but differently. So honestly, I was like a lot more negative 5 days ago whenever I made my video. And I gotta say, like just the quickie changes have really turned it around for me. And for me, the only thing I want the game to be is I want to wake up. I want to like immediately have the magnet to the PC, right? Where you're like, oh my, I brushing teeth, overrated. I'm just gonna go to the PC and you're just gonna like start gaming. And I haven't really had that in PoE2 yet, but in the last few days, it's starting, right?
yeah.
I can feel it a little bit.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. Ostron doesn't brush his teeth. Confirm, chat. Um, no, I feel that. I feel that, bro. I feel that so much. Like when a league launches and you just want to do nothing but game and you can't sleep. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
That's all we
I
want,
want that.
bro.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure. Do you feel like you wanted to add anything to this subject, Rex, or?
Yeah, it's like it's kind of as you guys described, it's like an endless game of cat and mouse. Here's the bottom line that a lot of people in the community just need to hear, and actually like take 10 seconds and do your deep breathing techniques and let it soak in. What we don't need is PoE1 again. We had PoE1. I do think that it was a little bit surprising that some of the systems like crafting just that they are just seemingly worse, a lot worse right now. In the end game, it's just it, at least in the first iteration, it's just seemingly a lot worse than what we had in PoE1. It's the age old problem where, can you imagine if grinding gear games had just continued to get feedback for, let's say, another 6 months, and let's say whatever the next patch is was 0.3, that had been everyone's first time playing PoE2. The campaign is a little bit easier. The swarmy monsters aren't there. A lot the map tab is in the game. You actually go to the nexuses and cleanse. There's a little bit of a strategy. You have 6 portals. There's so many things that out of the gate made people very contentious that it devolved very quickly into, why didn't you make PoE1? But it sounds like they already have tons and tons of ideas for building out their full vision of the game that we just haven't seen yet. So when you log in, it's like Palstron said, logged into a patch, felt like shit, made an angry video. They make some relatively small changes that they can make in a single day, and the game already feels better. It's this age old problem of, yes, there's early access for a game, but it's also your chance to make a first impression with a huge amount of the audience. I think gaming companies in general could launch stuff in early access much further in its development going
Yeah.
forward to avoid this situation.
Agreed. The game
Yeah,
released way too
that's
early.
I want 100% agree with that, and that's like a thing that GG has always done. And the thing is, you get conditioned to complaining because you feel like that's the only way you get change because something gets from, like, for example, I mean, I always bring up bestiary with like nets, right? It's like, okay, GG's like, we're gonna make a Pokemon League, and imagine Pewee 1, like as fast paced as it is, get enemies to 10% HP exactly, and then throw a Pokeball and wait, right? Like that makes no sense. It's like nobody tested this. And those kind of leaks get implemented, and you're just like wondering what the hell happened there. So you get conditioned over time, is what I'm saying, that feedback gets you somewhere, and then feedback gets changed. So you have a lot of the vocal people being like, that's how you get change. And if that is also something where I can defend them, but at the same time, I understand everybody who criticizes them because they chose to put it out in that fashion, right? At the same time.
And there tends to be a lot of like this misunderstanding of like the fact that there are players who are playing like 100 times more than other people that experience the problems other people might not experience much sooner, that then complain, and people are like, what are you talking about? And then 2 weeks later, everyone has the same complaints, right? Which is also, I think, pretty much like as old as time itself in Path of Exile. So
I do think that is one of the that's one of the issues that we can actually place on ourselves or on the community sometimes, not always. A lot of times the complaining is warranted and it comes from a place of passion. But a lot of times I think people just bitch just to bitch. And I'll be honest with you, man. I don't know how you guys feel about it. After doing this for so many years, eventually you just get kind of sick of it. So what I try to do is like the Men in Black, you know how you just wipe everything clean. When something new comes out, I try to just give it a fresh perspective and not going in like already with my gun drawn, you know, ready to complain about everything. I give you an example. Like in the last patch, I started like 2 different characters. Huntress, I switched off of it in Act 2 just because I wasn't really enjoying it. And then I went and played Lich, and I was just cruising, just killing everything. It was a lot more fun. But a lot of people were asking me, you know, like the campaign is too hard. What do you think? Da 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 da. And I said, well, I agree with you. Like it's pretty difficult here, but I'm not struggling here. Like I'm sure you guys weren't either. It's like the people that degenerately play this game. Do you think the fact that Act 2 Jamanra is a tough boss is going to stop us? I mean, maybe we wipe once or twice and we just press forward. So a lot of the times, one thing that it kind of makes me scratch my head is like, if I make a video saying I do think the campaign is in like an unfair position, there's too many swarmy monsters, the Act 2 boss is stopping half of my chat from me playing the game, and then they say, Rax, you're a noob. It's like, bro, do you think that I can't kill Jamanra? Like, are you serious? I
gaslighting in day one.
It's like, I don't know. I'm very sick of all the negativity, and I try not to feed into it. What I try to do is on a new patch, I play what they've got, and I ask myself, how am I feeling? Is this better? Try to give the feedback and see what happens.
Very reasonable take.
Pretty healthy,
but it's that's also a nice segue into talking about the early game and the campaign itself. And for me, the main thing that I felt like the main issue is they really try to go for this scarcity approach where you're just picking up items, salvaging, and all that kind of stuff. And watching the interview with Jonathan actually gave me a lot of insight on how he plays. And, you know, there's like these memes going around about like Jonathan's client or whatever, like he has like infinite regal orbs or whatever else. But I do feel like there's a merit to saying that I feel like they're fairly disconnected from the community because they play on internal clients. And I don't know if that this is a conspiracy from my end. They play on internal clients with 0 ping. Porting to town does not take 20 minutes like it takes us. So me picking up items to take to town to salvage is not something I do because I have to load 3,000 people's MTXs and it takes 15 minutes to get there. And then I have to like salvage all the things. So what I'm going to do is I'm just not going to go to town. I'm not going to salvage. And what I just feels like to me, like you need the power lies in items, right? That's Pewee 2 puts 10 times more emphasis in items than Pewee 1 because of the fact that Pewee 1's passive tree has so much more power ingrained into it. You can end the campaign in PoE 1 with 2 blue wands, right? If you do that in PoE 2, you're absolutely screwed. So the whole point is that they're not providing players the means to pull themselves out of the mud outside of salvaging, and salvaging is not something that people want to engage in. Specifically because, first of all, I think it's just tedious, which is a personal opinion. And secondly, because doing that on League Start means I have to take a 15-minute trip to the town in order to just get my things salvaged. And this is exacerbated when you get to Act 3 because of the way that it functions. It adds even more layers to me wanting to do this. But that's my point of view, and it's quite loaded, but I did want to know what you guys' opinion are on this, because I have put like a lot of thought into it, but I'd really want to know your perspective, because maybe I'd love to change my opinion and perspective on these things, like just hearing what you guys think.
Rex?
I mean, it's an age-old problem, right? So how is their perspective of them playing the game versus us? The thing is the first time that I played Elden Ring, I thought the game was very difficult in a great way. Like I didn't use a summon at all. Obviously, use a summon, it completely changes the game. Like it's kind of like choose your own difficulty. If you go into a boss and use a summon, and the boss is not even meleeing you, it's meleeing your ad. Even if the ad does no damage, it's free, right? Definitely, Jonathan and Mark are going to be significantly better at the game than the average person. And the average person is, especially in PoE 2, more than PoE 1, a very important target demographic for them. They've got to find a very consistent and concrete way to solicit feedback from them. I know the way that Blizzard does it, which I guess admittedly, I don't actually know how it works, but I know that they do surveys. They vomit out surveys all the time. To me, personally, that seems like an extremely shitty way to get feedback. On a scale of 1 to 5, how much did you like the campaign? Any other points to add about the like that is not how you are going to learn anything. What would be much better is to get a bunch of random average Jim Bobs and not really to have a dialogue, only listen and just say, tell me how playing the campaign was for you. How many hours did you play? What class did you play? Tell me what the memorable moments were for you, good or bad. Another thing about like the pacing of the game. Like you mentioned that Jonathan doesn't give us tools to get us, unstuck out of the mud. I think this is a feeling that I get. I haven't heard them say this, but it seems like um, the vision for PoE 2's campaign is not that you just kind of waltz forward through it, meaning you don't walk forward, and if you fight the wolf boss and you can't kill him, well, now you can just port to town, and with your decent amount of crafting materials, you can solve your problems, port back down, and kill him. It sounds like they want you to explore and struggle and, maybe even encounter a boss that you can't kill and, go farm some more levels, go get another support gem, go farm some crafting materials to try to get an upgrade or two, and then go back in. To me personally, if that is their vision, in general, I like those games like Elden Ring. Sometimes, like the water temple boss on Zelda is too tough and you missed a key upgrade and you have to go get it. But that's definitely not the norm in ARPGs, right? Like maybe a little bit in No Rest for the Wicked, but No Rest for the Wicked isn't sending 10 wolves at Mach 10 after you. You fight one wolf. And I don't know, like it for me, for the masses, for me, if that is their vision, I think it's going to be very tough for them to pull that off and not have people have a bad feeling about it because it is an ARPG.
Yeah.
Well, Rex said there, I can 100% agree with, because I had that negative reaction at the start as well, because I play PoE 1, easiest campaign of your life. Last Epoch, easiest campaign of your life. Torchlight Infinite, easiest campaign of your life. D3, easiest campaign of your life. Like all of these are basically just placeholders to get you in the game. They don't mean anything. You click through the lore and then you get to end game. Nobody knows why they exist, but they kind of exist so the game is kind of like cohesive, right? But PoE 2 has a different approach, and I've had this before where I'm before Dreadnought and I'm not playing in an optimal setup, and I'm like resetting the zone 2 more times, and I'm getting another 3 levels, and all of a sudden I have like 15% more damage, and I got like a little bit more life, and I found 2 more items that I can use, and all of a sudden I can do Dreadnought, right? And I'm not used to this, like redoing content and over leveling or whatever for certain bosses that are a little bit overtuned. But then you do it and you're like, yeah, okay, that's not too bad. And I'm having trouble knowing, am I the problem in terms of, do I not am I just not used to it? And do I have something in my mind how it is ought to be? Or is it actually not enjoyable, right? Like in the moment, obviously, I know it's not enjoyable, but maybe it's kind of like in PoE 2 when you start feeling the end game and you kind of start understanding how to make currency, you start throwing essences on items, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, now I have divines, and then it's like, I don't know. Maybe it's just like a struggle at the start, and it's gonna become normal. So I don't know. It's like really hard to say.
Well,
So
in my opinion, the campaign is supposed to be a tutorial for the game, right? And as a
Yeah, but
person is
you can
going,
have that hard, like Souls-like
yeah,
games,
yeah,
right?
like
Like
the
have
difficulty
difficult tutorials
regardless,
as well.
right? But like in the campaign, the only thing you realistically interact with is the disenchanter and the vendor. What does that teach you about Path of Exile? Like a game with the most intricate and the best currency system ever invented, and like the most item depth in any game ever made. Like when what you're doing is control Fing the vendor and salvaging stuff, right? Where is like running your game teaching a person this is an alchemy orb, this is what it does, be careful, don't want to use it on everything, it's fairly rare,
Yeah,
this is an
of course.
exalted orb, like there's no interaction between the core systems of the game and teaching them to the player in the campaign. And then the fact that there is such restricted access to items, and it's so obscure how you search for items, because people are just like not checking the vendors every level, which is what you do to make the campaign easier, right? Like if you check the vendors every level, the campaign is not that bad. Like it's realistically pretty easy. Control F resistance, you'll eventually be capped. Regal those, you're fine, right? But the problem is that like there's this disconnect between what the developers want you to do and what people are doing, when it could just be solved by cutting out the middleman, in my opinion, and the middleman being the disenchanter. Like drop the shards, drop the orbs, you know, make the game about killing monsters, which is what people want to do. Like, why are we interacting with NPCs for our way of obtaining items in a game that's all about killing monsters, dropping loot, and upgrading our items through the loot that they drop, right? To me, it just feels like there's massive dissonance between how people want to play ARPGs and how running your games wants to make you play through the campaign. Now, it's very loaded and a very opinion-based statement, what I just said, but that's my point of view.
So, real quick to touch on what Palstron said, he asked like a philosophical question: is the problem like with us? Like, are we just not used to this, and are we complaining that the PoE campaign is challenging and is trying to like stop you in your tracks? And how should it be? Should it just be like a tutorial for the game that you just skip through and yada yada yada? I think the answer here, at least for me personally, is pretty obvious. I think that they want to make the campaign an experience, a game, and in D4 was able to do that in a few moments, at least in the base campaign for me. Like I believe it was the second boss where that giant dog spawns in that town and just lights the whole town on fire and destroys the town. And back then, when the game was much more difficult, it was actually a tough fight too. It's like, oh, I actually remember fighting that boss, and then I don't remember much of any of the rest of the campaign. Maybe when you fight Lilith at the end, or when you see Andariel again. Like, but there was at least like a moment or two where I remember like a really cool thing that happened, a really challenging boss fight. I think if we had the choice, if we zoomed out, if we forgot every single game, if we forgot all preconceived notions, we said, okay, when you buy an ARPG and you have a campaign, the campaign could just serve as just a stupid tutorial for the end game, or it could be an actual game, a challenging game that's, trying to really test you and all these different things. I would pick the second one all the time, which I think is what grinding gear games is trying to make. And I think the fact that we just aren't used to it, I think is kind of a bad excuse. I think that like I really remember a lot of the PoE 2 campaign, like when I fought the wolf. I'm really actually I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm actually really looking forward to Acts 4, 5, and 6. They might be some really tough, memorable bosses in there that it's actually kind of a struggle to get through. I remember like when I'm playing my hardcore characters, when I get to Ruja and Ruja does her swingy bob, and if she hits you with that, it's like a 100-0. It's like I have to play here or my hardcore journey is over. I think that's way better than the former of here's a piece of shit tutorial that you just run through every single league. That's your campaign. Da 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 da.
That's true.
I think the the genre breaking stuff for me that I've had to kind of struggle with in PoE 2 is the kind of dopamine levels that PoE 2 has in terms of being able to shut your brain off and just grind, right? Have a grinding gear game and just very little friction, being able to control every single variable everywhere, like you said earlier, Rax, right? Like what you farm, where you farm, how you farm it, at what pace you farm it. And that is currently not there in PoE 2 for me, where I feel like I'm in the zone, right? Like where I'm like, I don't even know, I can't even measure time anymore because I still have these moments where I'm challenged, right? So at the same time where you say it's good to be challenged often with like the game throwing stuff at you, at the same time, I'm used to ARPGs where that is the case, right? Where you can turn your brain off and where you can have those feelings, right? That runner's high or whatever you want to call it. So I'm having really a really hard time kind of marrying those ideas, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with this. Like, and it resonates with me a lot. Like, where I feel like RPGs really shine when you have those ups and downs of like having to pay attention and that kind of stuff. And this might be like a bit of a cook take, but I don't know how people feel about it. I feel like Diablo 3 kind of achieved this in that like you have farming mode, like even though the farming mode was completely ass, but you have farming mode and then you have lock-in mode. You know, when you're pushing GRs, you're locked in. When you're farming. And then when you come across a rare or like a Greater Rift Guardian or something like that, like you have to be locked in. But the game is about like you're mowing shit down and then you're focused. You're mowing shit down and you're focused. So like having those like, moments of like you need to lock in and then you get a reward for it. It just feels like we're sort of like lacking that a bit in PoE 2, especially during the campaign. Like I think most people just want to kill white monsters, get to a rare, and then lock in, right? Like and at the moment it feels like you're locked in for the white monsters and the rare comes along and it's just like you're locked in even more, but it's more just like doesn't have that sort of like ARPG sort of like wave type of attention span that people have become accustomed to.
I think a lot of people would agree with what you said. I think to some degree, grinding gear games agrees with it. So I think grinding gear games is trying to do a very, very fine balance, which is not easy to do, of to not have the white mobs completely meaningless. Like they could kill you if you pull several screens of them and you make a mistake, that they could kill you. But again, it's an ARPG. We need to have some speed. We need to have some fluidity. There's a time for farming. There's a time for bossing or for some engaging fights. And we can see that they didn't hit the mark. It's been like pretty heavily in favor, at least in the early campaign, of the white mobs. Like I always say on my stream, like, oh, it's a white mob. Let me back up to the start. Like I've got Ragnaros chasing me here. But they seem to agree because they did a pass through. They adjusted some of the swarmy monsters. I remember, I'll never forget. I zoned into the second zone for the first time after killing the miller. A white wolf came up to me and bit me for 60% of my health bar. I'm like, I just lost 60% of my health to a white mob, and there's like 5 of them, and I don't have any gold. I don't have any gear. Like this is what everyone will have. I was like, all right, that's a bit insane. I think that was their way of saying like, welcome to Path of Exile 2, but that's not the message we want to deliver. It doesn't need to be that severe, right?
Yeah.
So I think, again, as Palstron said at the beginning of the podcast, iteratively, they'll get it much closer. It's been in favor of the monsters, the white trash mobs so far, for sure.
100%.
It's interesting you say that because I criticize white mobs a lot in this game, and I feel like what you just said kind of puts the nail on the head where in most ARPGs, white mobs don't really exist other than to show you how strong you are. Whether you proliferate from them, they're basically just like there to get exploded, right? They're just a power fantasy, right? Whereas magic mobs have a little bit of a ramp up, and then rares are there to stop you a little bit, and then uniques are above that. But taking away that layer of making you feel strong and those white mobs actually being challenging kind of makes your character feel weaker overall. I feel like, opposed to other RPGs. And the question is that a problem that you have these white mobs as stand-ins to make you feel good about your character? That's the question. I don't really see why that would be a problem. White mobs need to be deadly, and also if white mobs are that deadly, like you said, I mean, you're not wrong. White mobs literally hit harder than some of the bosses. Like there is white mobs like the skeletons. If you get hit by that, right, it's over. Whereas I can literally tank bosses, and I just have the feeling like, why? If the rarity of a mob doesn't mean anything, then what does it mean? Like, what does it mean at all, right?
You know what's weird sometimes is like I feel like I get hit by like a blue or a white monster for just as hard as when I'm doing like a boss. Right.
Yes.
And it's like it just feels like
100%.
the balance is so out of whack where like a boss hits me, I get hit for 1.5k. I'm in a map, I get hit by like a blue or a rare, and I just get hit for 1.5k as well. It's like what? I'm literally fighting like I don't know, like Zesht, you know, this guy is like the god of hands or whatever. Like he's supposed to like slap me, you know, into the next dimension. That's what he does. That's why he's got so many hands. But a white monster has the same amount of like power, relative power, in T15 maps than this guy. Like,
So again, like, to talk to grinding your games, like if you want a data point, like how do we turn this into actual feedback? So I'm playing Essence Drain Contagion Lich, which is just like dots, right? And I don't know how many deaths I have in maps. I just a guess. Let's say I've died 10 times in maps. I have never died to a boss, and my character is not a bosser at all. I have to put up the dots. I put up my totem. By the way, my totem dies in one hit. He's the guy that does most of my damage. I'm resummoning him all the time. By the way, he's expensive. It drains all of my mana. But whatever. I put up my dots. I put up my totem like 15 times because he keeps getting one-shotted. And then I just run around the arena, and you can't kill me. And if you hit me, you still won't kill me. I have 6,000 energy shield and 2,000 health. I haven't died one time to a boss. But like, I turn the corner, and 5 white mobs that are super fast, and each of them melee me for 1.5, they can absolutely kill me. So it's like that's the part, like that's an actual example. That's a data point, like a focus group chat of the boss. The relative power is certainly off. Like however they want to design it, certainly the boss is supposed to be harder than the trash. I don't fear any boss. I can just run away from your mechanics
100%,
easily.
You know what the best example is that I just remembered? Do you guys know the poison snake boss in Act 3, which is a pretty hard boss overall? Yeah, Viper, yeah. And after she dies, it's like, oh wow, I beat the boss, and you're like, it was kind of challenging, right? And you like pick up the stuff, and you're like, yo, chat, what do you think about that? And then you look back on the screen, and 5 white mobs surround you, like the warriors that come out afterwards, and they 2-shot you, right? And you're like, huh? I just got like slammed. Like I don't know what just happened.
God, and then there are 2 minions.
Yeah.
Like
Meanwhile, Viper, I could tank several of those spear poison thingies, right, and flask through it. Like it is wild, yeah.
Crazy. I think Path of Exile is the only RPG where you can like genuinely just like get 2-shot to a white monster. It makes 0 sense. I've been doing like my sort of like research and looking around at like the damage that people are taking in other games, and it just makes, honestly, it kind of doesn't really make too sense. And I know it's because of the fact that there is so much variance in gear and map modifiers and all of this kind of stuff. So it's like impossible for them to balance. But it just doesn't feel right. It feels like it should be balanced around the floor, and then for people that want or are stronger, you should allow them for more challenge. But I don't feel like map modifiers are achieving that, and they're not achieving that for me. They never achieved that in Path of Exile 1 either. Like, map modifiers are not exactly like how to make content harder, right? In Path of Exile 1, it's kind of devolved into stacking damage reduction on monsters, as well as like toughness and that kind of stuff, right? Which has gotten a bit ridiculous in that game too. And I'm not saying that's the arbiter of truth, like when it comes to ARPGs. I think like the whack, like it's completely out of whack in Path of Exile 1 as well. But in PoE 2, they've just like taken this issue and like plugged it in as well. So yeah,
I think one final point on this is, I think this is one of the things that's going to be hardest to solve with how many variables in Path of Exile 2 still have to change. We don't even have like half the classes released. We don't even have half of the weapon types. And like still like, you know, we just talked about, we go one side of the tree, you're forced to spec into it. There's so many variables that I expect them to open up in the game, that keeping the right balance between the monsters all the time at every single patch is going to be extremely difficult, and honestly probably you could even argue a waste of time, because what's really going to matter is when you got the basic stuff, the basic stuff of your vision, you got all the classes in the game. I really care about what does the balance feel like then. It doesn't feel good for us as players right now in early access, because a lot of us didn't buy early access to be testers. We just bought it just to have fun in a game. But with how many variables are still yet to change, I think that doing the massive balance patches now all the time might actually be a waste of resources.
Yeah,
fair enough.
it might be, which is one of the problems with starting early access so early, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
I
just
actually
gotta
came
do
to
it
the same
further along.
conclusion. I
mean,
felt like
I know a
early
lot of
access came out
people
too early,
who-
right?
Yeah, I know a lot of people who checked into the first patch when they released early access, and they basically said, "Yeah, I'm coming back in a year."
Waiting in, yeah. In
minimum.
a
And
way,
in the
like
meantime,
that's the
and that's
curse
a
of
good
being
strategy.
a streamer in a way. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's a good strategy. If you're a
Absolutely.
streamer making content, you're not having fun,
And you're not building that
come back in
baggage
a year.
either. We're building
No,
the
I
baggage
mean, one of the
like,
reasons I'm playing,
yeah,
one of the reasons I'm playing right now is literally to learn the game. Right, I want to be on top, kind of,
when it
where I
comes
know
out.
what's going on. Because
Yeah.
you know how you miss a patch in PoE 1, for example, and then you come back and it feels like you're an alien in like a fucking a different on a different planet, and it's like, what happened? I don't know with which patch what happened, right? And I don't want to have that feeling ever. I want to at least know a little bit of what's going on to never like lose that red dot, kind of. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now,
Imagine if you missed recombinating last league. I was talking to DM. I was like, "Have you tried recombinating?" He's like, "Nah, I don't want to build my town." I was like, "Oh yes, you do. Look at
You do.
look at this. Look at this chess piece. I just made 5 T1s or whatever."
I'm making a two-handed Ellie sword. I don't need enchantments. I think you should look into it, maybe.
Settlers V7 at this point. Holy, I'm ready. I mean, to move on from this subject though, I did want to ask you guys, how do you feel about, in general, build diversity in Path of Exile 2?
Honestly, I feel like it's okay. I feel like right now the meta is very stale in terms of top builds, because some of the bigger content creators make a build and everybody kind of follows it. I feel like the reason why most people don't play off meta right now is because they want to learn the game. They don't really know what's going on yet. Like there is no lightning strike to be tired of, or there is no oh, I've played Toxic Rain for 5 leagues in a row. There's only new skills you've never played before. So I think like if you have tastemakers that kind of everybody plays the same build, like Lightning Spear or whatever, people are gonna play it. yeah, I think right now there's a lot of viable builds, actually, a lot of viable builds that aren't being played as well.
True.
I'll be honest with you, like it's such a fresh experience. I'm also not like the biggest PoE 1 vet. I've only played for 1 year. A lot of this is just completely new to me, and I have played games with a lot less depth for a lot longer. So I'm not currently getting bored. I think the phenomenon that Palstron described is what happens a lot. People make a certain build, everybody copies it, it works. There are some people experimenting here and there and here and there. But for example, no one expected Warrior to win all the races, and then Angurmus goes in with Perfect Strike and just deletes all of them. Whereas before, everyone was laughing at like how bad Warrior was. I think, as I okay to give you a direct point of feedback though, on this topic, there is something that I feel is off. I'm wondering if you guys agree. When I am making a build and they said like, "Oh, we're adding 100 new support gems." When I look at it, when I actually take the time to read them and figure out what could go in here, there usually aren't a lot of choices. It's usually boils down to, okay, there's 3 or 4 of these that either give me chaining or 25% multiplicative damage for a downside that I can easily deal with, and that's it. Or I apply lightning exposure or whatever. Like I think their goal is for the skills to actually have like 10 truly viable choices for your main skill for a lot of different builds, and I am not feeling that way. I was like, okay, here's what I'm doing. Okay, let's go see what Fubgun is doing. Oh, he has the same gems except one is different. I'm like, okay. So I think they're trying to make that happen, but I'm currently not feeling like it's there really at all.
I feel like they have a lot of damage on Tuesdays while drinking a beer kind of supports, which is like worse than even D4. Well, D4, we always talked about damage on Tuesdays, but these are like on steroids, right?
Yeah, very conditional. Yeah.
A lot of the support gems, and they make no sense. And it's like you warp your build around and then you get 30% more damage. It's like, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna do that. But I think so. So I'll give you an example. I'm currently using the Deep Tower unique helmet that makes it so enemies around me are considered on low life, and it basically enabled me to use Execute for 50% more damage. So
Right.
just from that small example, I don't think the supports are there yet, but what I think they should do is exactly something like that, where if they make those damage on Tuesdays thingies, they should give more support with uniques, which you could argue again, not all uniques are out and blah, blah, blah.
Or
But I feel like there's not
sentences.
enough synergies right now. Yeah, there's not enough synergies. There's like these weird conditions, but there's no plan laid out for you to actually fulfill them other than being in an awkward situation or something. So I feel like that's the problem right now. I don't even think the problem is that they are situational. I think that it can be good, but yeah, right now they're off, and they're also too niche. There need to still be more supports. Like there
There needs
need to be way
yeah.
more. Yeah, and I guess the last problem that I'll raise is, can they even make damage multiplier supports and make the others viable? Like, I don't know. I'm always just looking for damage multipliers. Like, if my main skill doesn't have 5 damage multipliers or one that just explodes my clear, I'm doing something wrong. So all these like conditionals and whatnot, like they just make no sense to me. Should they just remove all the damage? Or should they go PoE1 route where they add more damage options, and then it's like, do I take this 20% more with a downside or this 20? Like, where does it end? Because at the end of the day, it will all come back to damage multipliers. So I don't know.
I
So
actually agree with that. I don't like the damage multipliers. Sorry, go on, guys.
Maybe you just remove them. I don't
I
know.
didn't
no,
mean to
no,
interrupt.
go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So yeah, I feel like the damage multipliers, like their reasoning why they decided to add damage multipliers back, what they explicitly mentioned in one of the interviews, was because in the development pipeline they didn't want multipliers before you can only have one support gem on each specific thing, and then they deemed that since they started adding that limitation where you can have one support gem, then that's where damage multipliers could come back in. But I do feel like it's still at the point right now where there's so many of these gems that do end up being multipliers that you're just going to put all the multipliers on your main skill that you want to deal damage with. Like, primal armaments is always gonna go like into your 5 link, 6 link or whatever. So it does become like a Path of Exile 1 scenario where you're just looking at multipliers and then tacking on some mechanics, but it just feels like some mechanics are just so absurdly broken in comparison to others. Like, I read Lightning Spear before the league went live, and I'm like, yeah, that gem is turbo broken. Like, you're splitting and then you're chaining. Like, what is that? You look at Volt as well, and it's just like it's just insane, right? There's some skill gems that are just absurdly broken, and there's some support gems that are just absurdly broken. And then that's why you end up seeing everybody wearing the same items and doing the same things, because if something is just so absurdly broken and then you're stacking those absurdly broken multipliers together, then you end up with a build like Lightning Spear, right? And it's, of course, 70% of Amazons are going to play that because it's like, I know there's some people that like to like sort of like exhibit their individuality by playing different things, and I'm the same. I love that about PoE1. It's like I'm able to create a build and it's like that's my build. And you know, props to those dudes, but at the same time it kind of then also feels bad in 2025 when you do open a video or a stream and you see this guy who's like cheating on everything and you're struggling, right? So there's like a flip side to that where I just sort of wish like decisions weren't so clear cut and the clear cut thing wasn't so far ahead of everything else, so that I didn't feel quite as bad for exploring different options. And that's
and the other problem
issue
with what you just said with the more multipliers that you know is they said they want you to have several damaging skills, right? Like that's what they kind of want to do. They want to wanted to, so you can actually like have 2 damage dealers, for example. How can you do that if you put your 5 best damage multipliers on the first skill? Now the second one has like, I don't know, nothing left. That's like another problem. And I like the system with only being able to use a support gem once, don't get me wrong. But I'm saying maybe just remove literally all damage multipliers and just make everything more unique. And what they could do is, Torchlight actually has a system like that, is they could just make baseline, none of the support gems have a damage multiplier, and if they want to put damage multipliers on it, you can upgrade every support gem to have like a damage multiplier if that is necessary, right? Like 5, 10, 15, 20, I think is the steps in Torchlight, if they really want to. So detach the damage multipliers from the support gems and then have all the support gems be
like an endgame
uniquely something else.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I see.
For example.
Yeah, and so the aftermath of all of this is what feels bad for me with how things have currently been happening. So, for example, from the first patch to the second patch, they looked at a lot of the skills, they looked at a lot of the supports, and then we see this phenomenon where, okay, we're stacking 5 damage multipliers, and then they said, okay, well, I know how to solve that. We just nerf them all. The Tempest Bell, you do 20 million damage to Zest. Well, we'll just make the combo 10. Oh, the Scatter Shot. Scatter Shot, you're getting the extra projectiles for free. Oh, we'll just nerf the living shit out of it here, and there we go. And we're going to reduce this number and that number and that number. And okay, now go play Path of Exile. But then there's, it connects to the problem for me that Crouching Tuna alluded to earlier, where the items for me feel like such an insane part of the damage that I'm getting in PoE2. So it's not the passive tree, it's always just what I'm getting. And now that you've nerfed everything, when I finally, before, one of the only dopamine hits that I had that's kind of outside of items, which were these jeweler's orbs, now when I get them, I'm just way less excited, because before you nerfed everything, when I got a jeweler's orb, I felt like $1 million. I'm like, I'm about to get something absolutely insane. But now when I already have my 3 link, my 4th link, it's like, well, there's only like 3 choices, and grinding your games just nerf the shit out of all of them. And I was literally sitting on a couple of skills this league, and I was like, I'm going to have to actually do some math and see, does Scattershot even make my build better? Like, is this even something that I take anymore? And if nothing else, like if not even talking about like literal balance of the game, I think for a lot of players, it just makes it less fun. It's like, didn't get a good upgrade, and I literally have to do a math problem to even see if this even helps my build. And I think for the masses just don't like that.
Which is also an issue that Tuna touched on, but we didn't really go into it with progression, is that items are so high rolly. Like, items are so much stronger than everything else. And the problem is everything you just named, right? Passive tree, ascendancies are way weaker than in PoE 1. You have the support gems are way weaker. Those are all intrinsic. They don't cost you anything, basically, kind of deal. But everything that you find is so much stronger. And as Mark talked about, they wanted the gear to kind of be the baseline and then everything else be multipliers off of that baseline. But the problem is, like, as we know, baseline stats are like insane. If you don't have anything to multiply off of, then
Exactly.
good luck. So that's another thing that also plays into early game with what you just described, right?
I'm almost convinced that like you give people alchemy orbs and the campaign will be solved for literally everyone. Like I'm convinced that you give people an avenue to just like upgrade a base to a rare, even if like only 2 of those modifiers are relevant to your build. It's so much better than what we have right now. Like, it's gonna literally accelerate people into endgame and have a lot more fun, because people want to interact with items, man. They want to pick up an item, put an orb onto it, see what little loot box of like stats they unbox. Like, it's like that's, I don't know, man. It just, you just lack that
talking
like
about
happiness in the campaign of like putting an orb and it's like, yeah, what's sick.
Did you talk to anybody playing Smith of Kitava this patch and leveling with it?
Yeah, they're just like
So,
cruising, bro. 75 res.
Yeah, the
like...
funny part about the Alk is this: how much res do we have doing progression? I know I have like, I'm stuck on like 10 to 20 res at every point maximum, right? And they're cruising around with like
res.
75. Yeah, 75 after the second lap. They have like 90 mech, maybe not 90 at that point. Let's say 80, 82 or something. And they're immortal during the campaign. And all of a sudden, all this like pressure and friction goes away. So yeah, maybe alking would make that difference, or maybe spewing out more rares would make that difference. Yeah, could be
100%. The issue again goes back to like there is a system for it, which is like disenchanting. But I'm gonna be 100% with you guys. Like, on League Start, me going to town was literally a 15-minute experience. And between the crashes and loading NTXs and loading screens and stuff, it was really unenjoyable. So I was like really keeping that at an all-time minimum wherever possible. And GG really wants to make towns matter. That is like that. Like, town is the campaign for them. That's where most of the magic happens in regards to like your character progression and that kind of stuff. So like without the towns, you're cutting out like 60% of where progression is supposed to happen in the campaign. And for me, that makes the experience absolutely horrible. That makes it horrible.
Yeah, so I've leveled 4 SSF characters to hardcore SSF characters to 90 or higher. And going through the campaign, I get, let's say, 95% of my gear comes from only 3 sources. Either comes from buying it from the vendors, gambling, or you dropped the rare on the ground. The rares don't drop like super commonly. It's not a common thing. It's like very, very rare that you're going to give me a base and I'm going to go explicitly try to go make it good. Like, maybe if you're playing a ranger and you get like a dual string bow and you finally get the 2 arrows or something, maybe you're like, all right, this is an upgraded base. I'll take my chances here. But actually, like, crafting on the fly, other than just throwing exalts on a really good rare that you're going to use for the whole the whole campaign, I never found it to be even like a choice. It's not even like a possibility. I don't have anything. So that would be my feedback to grinding your games: is this is how I'm feeling, this is how I'm gearing. Do you want me to do most of it with just the random rares that I find and talking to these 2 vendors? Is that what the vision here is? And I doubt it.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like one thing they could also do is just remove the whole rune system with like having to add runes. Just give items runes. Like, just
I
make
like
them
runes.
innately have runes.
Play devil's
Then you have
advocate.
the whole crafting bit. Yeah, you can get attributes everywhere. You can get res if you want to. I don't understand the currency that adds them is completely worthless in endgame anyways. So I don't know why that point of friction is even there. You could get a little bit of resistances if they want to put it on the tree. You can fix your attributes. Like it wouldn't even solve everything. It would just be a nice convenience, right?
I see what you mean. Like, I kind of like runes. Are you talking about? Maybe I misunderstand. I kind of like runes, but I've had the issue where I'm getting like 10-1 rune to artificer orb ratio, and then I can't go to town because I can't. Like it takes like forever to load. And
Oh, I mean Artificer's Orb, yeah. Like just
right,
remove
yeah.
Artificer's Orb.
And just have
and
sockets just there by default. You
sockets
mean?
on items.
Yeah.
And
I
it's not
like,
really a friction point in endgame anyways.
Exactly,
It doesn't add anything, I feel like.
It makes the campaign even more of a like I need to go to town to disenchant, and that exacerbated the issue for me like ×3, and I complained about that so much to my chat. It's like, where's the artificer orbs? Why don't I have artificer orbs? I need to go to town to disenchant, and then you fill up your inventory with stuff. I don't know. That's a massive
and also,
pain point
if you
for
remember,
me, for sure.
Yeah, and they were talking about like the problem in PoE1, for example, where you find a foiling and now you can't replace your helmet anymore, right? And you're running around with that level 30 helmet until you're done with the campaign. The same thing can be true for runes, right? On certain item pieces where all of a sudden you get like a little bit of extra, but that shouldn't be the case. Like if that shouldn't be the case and they want runes to be the new crafting bench as they claimed, then just drop it with rune
Sockets
sockets
on there
and just
already.
yeah.
I thought it was like maybe it's like my own stupidity, but I thought they've said this in multiple interviews. They say runes are the crafting bench. They just replace them. And I don't know if I'm crazy, but I think the crafting bench is way stronger than runes. Like I don't think it's even close. And like I don't know why they keep saying that, because with my crafting bench, it's very simple. Whenever I get a new piece of gear for an extremely low cost, for a borderline zero cost, I can add pretty much one stat at a low magnitude to any piece of gear that truly helps me. Like with the runes, and they did say this in one of their interviews. They said maybe the magnitude is wrong, maybe the magnitude is too low, and they did also add more variety. So I think the rune system is approaching the crafting bench step by step by step. But I already have to have the rune, and then you can't unsocket a rune, right? You can replace it, but you can't unsocket it. And sometimes, like when you're going through the campaign and you're not getting that many drops, if you really need fire res, but you spent the fire res on a hat that you had in Act 1 or something, and now that hat is gone, well, now also your rune is gone. It just seems to me way weaker and honestly more annoying to use than the crafting bench. And then they actually identified their own problem. They said, like, the problem with the crafting bench is it wasn't front facing. We put the crafting bench in your hideout and nobody knows to go back to your hideout. And I just lean back in my chair and that's one that I cannot rationalize in my mind. I'm like, all right, so you have the crafting bench and it works beautifully. It's just not in front of players. So your idea was to remove it and put in the rune system rather than just bring back the crafting bench and just put it in front of them. Just a tutorial. Here it is. Yeah, and just put it there. Like the other, instead we have multiple benches. Hey, go pick up all these items where you have to salvage and get these little pieces of sockets to get an artificer orb to socket to use the rune. You're telling me that that's more complicated than the crafting bench? Come on.
And they could even leave out the harder parts about the crafting bench with like meta mods or whatever. They could even leave that out, like you just said. Yeah,
100%. And to add insult to injury, the benches as well, you don't unlock them by default, right? You have to do a quest. Like you could be a player that goes through the entire game and not even realize that you've missed the smith's tools.
That happened to me in my very first playthrough when PoE 2 came out. I didn't know anything about the game, and I'd never played it before. First time I booted up on the beach, first time I played. And I was in Act 3, and I was just like, I was like looking around, and I was like, what are these little sockets here they do? I guess I asked chat, I was like, do you disenchant everything or do you vendor everything? And they're like, yeah, I'm salvaging it for the artificer shards. I'm like, where do
The
you
fuck
do
are
that?
those?
And they go, oh, they say at the bench. What bench? Oh, you don't have it. It's back in Act 1. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. The weird system for sure. The thing I dislike the most about the campaign is the whole like, let's make everything revolve around the benches. Because I think like it would just be so much more fun to drop the thing on the floor and then apply it to your items. It's so much more of a cool system, I think.
Another thing while we're on the topic before we move away from it, I think like the smith's tools or whatever in Act 1, so you get that bench. I think it should be a required quest. Like
Yeah.
like you
Can't
have to get the
progress.
tools. You have to get the tools to open the gate to go fight the fire twisty boy with the ads, whatever his name is. I don't know what anybody's name is.
100%. It's so integral to how you play the game. Like you genuinely can't play the campaign. Like you can, but you're gonna struggle. Like it's so integral to how you play the game. The disenchanting bench, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely. I feel like it's interesting to hear that you guys are having many of the same issues that I was having as well, which kind of feels like as well. Then I'm sure that resonates with our viewers too. But yeah, I have a lot of hope in GGG and listening to the community and stuff like that, which they have been doing and they've been doing a great job. So
I'm like maybe this is just copium or whatever. I'm like 97% sure that when the game actually releases, it's going to feel good. It's going to have a good level of polish.
I hope so.
I think that the community and everybody putting forth effort, I think it's really helping Grinding Gear Games adjust some of their vision with, what actually feels good to play. I'm not worried about it at all. Like zero.
I'm not just worried about PoE2 itself. I'm also not worried about like having stuff to play right now. Like there's so many good things that I can honestly, if there was no patch for PoE2 in the next half year and then they come back, I would be fine. Like it feels like we're in a good equilibrium. But the only thing that I was kind of mad about was the PoE1 with the delay and everything. Like as long as I have PoE1 there to kind of like ground me, and then other small ARPGs, right? Like or ARPGs in general, I'll personally be fine. I feel like PoE2 is still so far away, like 2025 memes aside, so far away that I don't really see it as a roster thing yet. So I don't really worry about it that much. I obviously give my feedback and stuff, but I feel like talking about it is all good and well, but we're gonna look back to this and it's just like, I don't know, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It's
I
gonna be
feel
so
that.
much different.
Well, I mean, I think it does
Yeah.
matter because if this at all, like,
Yeah, feedback.
it resonates with the people that we're talking to, like our chats or whatever. People are watching this on YouTube and Twitch and all that kind of
100%.
stuff, and they think about it and they start engaging with the thoughts of like sort of like breaking down what bothers them, and then they articulate that to the devs, make Reddit posts. Like all of this matters, in my opinion. I think as
Yeah.
much as it may seem that we're just a bunch of complaining Andes, like it comes from a place of passion first of all, and second, we just want nothing but good from this game because of course we are going to benefit financially being streamers and that kind of stuff, but the reason why we got into streaming and that sort of stuff is because we love this game in the first place, right? So yeah, but I mean, like at least like for myself. But in regards to what you said, Paul, like I unfortunately do not feel that way with Path of Exile 2. I'm already done because for me the end game is just not it, and I'm looking forward to going back to Path of Exile 1. And I think a lot of the reason why there is so much negativity surrounding Path of Exile 2 is because for a lot of Path of Exile 1 players, it feels like they sort of like rug pulled our game and gave us this instead, and they're like, wait, why are you not enjoying this?
I
Like
totally
this
get that.
you're supposed to be enjoying this, like, and it's like, bro, we haven't got a patch in like 9 months, bro. Like we want to play the game that we fell in love with, and as much as we
I 100%.
support PoE2 and we want to see it be good, it's like, but then it's at the cost of like my routine, what I enjoy, my favorite game, and all that sort of stuff, right? So
No, I get what you mean, and that's definitely true. I didn't mean like that I don't mind PoE2 taking away from PoE1, right? What I meant basically is that I sometimes play D4 and I have fun for a few days, right? It's like I have like my 10 out of 10 experience, which is PoE1, but then I can also play 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10 experiences, and I have
100%.
just as much fun because it's a new patch or whatever. And that's what I mean with PoE2. PoE2 doesn't have to be like even an 8 or 9 out of 10 right now for me, right? As long as you said, as it doesn't take away from PO1. Yeah.
But the unfortunate reality is that it does, right? But then we have to judge it for
Yes.
what it is, which is like the thief of PoE1. Like, you know what I mean? It's stolen our baby. Like, I mean, I'm sorry. That's how it feels, like, you know? Man. Go on, what are you thinking, bro? Why are you laughing at me?
Well, there's gonna be a lot of people that I think don't understand that take. I get it, but there's gonna be a lot of people that just play PoE 2, right? There's a lot of people that are
course.
just new to the franchise that don't play PoE 1, and like the incessant PoE 1 fanboy
Yeah, no, we get that all the
perspective, they're
time.
gonna be like,
Yeah.
"What is wrong with this guy?"
Yeah, they're like,
Um,
why are you complaining? Why are you playing the old one game with shit graphics? Like, what's wrong with you? And we get that a lot,
I mean,
actually,
yeah, it
man.
makes sense. Like most
Yeah.
people haven't gone through the days when they said it's going to be one game, right? And then they're like, it won't take away from PoE1, and we're gonna keep supporting PoE1 and all that stuff, right? Like, so obviously,
I mean,
we got some baggage there, right? So I try to detach myself from that, but I know what. Sure.
I mean,
I
to sort
think
of prove a point here is like, it's the same thing that happened with D2 and D3 now. So if anybody went through that, then that's kind of, it feels like what has happened with PoE1 and 2.
If I could speak to grinding gear games, or if I could speak to it, it's always the same issue repeated endlessly, and I I know the answer, but it's also not the answer. The reason why this happens is because of money, but it also costs you money to keep making this mistake. It's always the same problem. These gaming companies have got to stop releasing things when they aren't ready. So,
Yep.
for example, like it feels like even this patch, a lot of people are having conversations of like, first of all, there's a lot of rumors going around which are just not, they're actually just wrong. I know they're wrong for sure. For example, Path of Exile and Grinding Your Games knew last Epoch's release date way ahead of time. Not when you heard it on the internet. They know it way earlier than that. I'm telling you, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not an opinion. I'm informing you that if you hold a different opinion, you're wrong.
100%.
And then they launch it right after. But that's not even the thing. It's like I think I'm guessing that they felt like they had to get something out to like remain competitive or remain relevant. They delayed the PoE 1 patch. You've got to get something. But it felt like the patch was just not ready because it's emergency hotfix. You know, we're on what, patch E or whatever in the last week. Then they have to rush to fix it. But again, the damage has been done. How many people logged in and are already done with this patch? Like, I haven't played the new campaign yet because by the time they released it, I had already beat the campaign on 2 of my characters, and I didn't want to go back and do it just
Yeah.
for the sake of seeing how much nicer the wolves were to me. And the thing that I would caution is release a patch for PoE 2 when it's ready. Release it when you have it nice and polished in the state that you want it, rather than get it out by this date and try to be relevant. If I'm literally begging grinding your games. If
I'm with
Path of
you.
Exile 2 is not ready in 2025, don't try to meet the Christmas deadline. Who gives a shit about that? Oh, but we make money if we release it then. Yeah, but you lose money because you only have one chance to make a first impression. Please, for the love of God, work on the
100%.
game and deliver us the patch that we want to see.
100%. 100%.
To
But this
add
is
to
the
that,
problem. Like, this is how GDG does their patches and has always
true.
done their patches.
Well,
Every
not always.
sorry,
Not always.
almost
They gave
always.
us 1
I
day
would say
Talstrom this time around. Like, we got patch notes 1 day without any numbers. which is the
Oh yeah,
next
yeah,
topic that
sure,
I
sure,
wanted
sure.
to bring up
No,
as
no, that's
well.
not what I mean. That's not
Right.
what I mean. There's like there's like a leak comes out, and week one, everybody's like, they never played this ever. Like I can't see anybody has ever played tested this, and then it gets fixed like like in the first month or something like that, and then at some point you have a good leak. That has been, I would say, 80% of PoE1 leaks, right? It's like, so they have always done that. So yeah, if they can they can do it differently with PoE2, that would be really good. Because if you haven't been around for a while, you're not used to that stuff. That is how they do their patches usually. Like QL later and whatnot, that has always been the thing. So yeah, I really hope they turn around.
100%. For me as a content creator, this 0.2 patch, because of how it was rushed and how they fed us information, I have to say it was very difficult to kind of like formulate an opinion as to what I wanted to play and also build hype for both myself and my community. It also doesn't really help, in my opinion, like sort of like build up to the the peak, which is usually like the league launch, right, which we usually have had in the past. Like so I think, I don't know, I wanted to get your opinion on how you felt like only having one day before the patch went live to decide what you were doing and to see the things has gone. And I also want to know your opinion on whether you feel like that is also the reason why some of the things were able to slip through into the game that we would have actually maybe have pointed out in the patch as being like, oh, that's not right, like that shouldn't go live, right? And then because historically they have actually done that, where they have amended things before the game has gone live. For example, even like broken shit, like for example, the ritual thing, I don't think would have ever gone live if they gave us patch notes ahead of time. Um, so yeah, what do you guys
So
thoughts on that?
I would say the first part about when do we get the patch notes, that hurts a few demographics. It hurts the blasters, it hurts the guide writers, it hurts like the Omega analytical like theory crafters. And I think the percentage of those players is very, very low. I I would prefer the patch notes much earlier. And you guys working on Maxwell with your YouTubes, it certainly makes life a lot easier if we get it earlier. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it's really not, if I'm being honest, it's not that big of a deal. But the second thing you said, I think is a huge deal. When they are like rushing to get the patch notes out, when they're making a bunch of last minute changes, this is where all the problems come out, right? This is where we don't get the polished experience that I'm pretty sure grinding gear games can deliver. This is where you lose the morale and the favor of probably, I mean, probably you lose more of it from the more casual player base than like the blasters, but even the blasters seem to be, they weren't super fond of the patch when it initially released. I I think that it would help grinding gear games a lot to say in 0.3 we're delivering on these 5 things about PoE2 and we're making it significantly better. We want to have our internal changes done by this date. We're going to QA it. We're going to have the patch notes a couple days before. And this is what we're delivering. And we're going to try to do it rather than, trying to rally everything in the last minute and hope that that goes well, because it usually doesn't for any gaming company in any game that I've seen.
Yeah,
Personally,
that's fair.
I think patch notes kind of like generate hype as well, though, because after the patch notes come out, not just content creators, but just like in general, everybody's talking about it for
Yeah,
days, and it just,
it's so
for me
exciting.
personally, that week leading up
It's true.
to
Christmas
the
week.
week leading up to the release is almost more magical than like the release itself. It's like
Yep.
nobody knows what's going on and everything is kind of in our heads, right? And people are prepping these ideas that they know are going to fall flat or maybe not. And it's not just about, I don't think it's just about content creators. It's about the whole ecosystem that generates that hype. And it felt kind of empty before because they still made that stream, right? Like 8 days before, but then we had those 7 days between where we're just all kind of
Just
wondering
don't
and
know
we're kind of like,
anything.
okay, should I think about PoE2 now, or because I don't know what's going on? Should I analyze the frames in the video? Like, so I still feel like it is definitely good for everybody if
Yeah,
they release it a little bit earlier.
I feel like in this case it's sort of like infectious, right? Like content creators are excited about stuff, and that shows in the content that they make, and then that's consumed by people who otherwise aren't theory crafters, blasters. So as much as I agree with what you said, Rex, I do think it also affects the greater demographic too, because of the fact that, like, in a way we are sort of like the ones that are leading the charge in regards to like meta as well as builds and that sort of stuff. The flip side to that is that the argument would be that the patch is solved by the time it comes out. But if you're new to Path of Exile, that might be something
Never
that you think
happens.
about. That never happens, not
Never.
even once. The build is never decided before the patch launches. Matter of fact, actually, this time in 0.2, the build was decided before the patch went. Like I drew a lightning spear in paint before the game came out, because it's just like, you look at the skill gem, it's broken, right? They showed us it in like one of the Ziggy videos, and it's like, yeah, that's broken. So this time, like, PoE 2 is solved way more than Path of Exile 1 because of the lack of variables, but like also, so that's not really an argument in this situation is all I was trying to say, which I'm just like rambling at this point. But I do feel like patch notes 1 week ahead is like a ritual that the Path of Exile community has always had, and it's very fun and very cool to engage with, and it creates engagement on Twitch, on YouTube, as well as in Discords, amongst communities, friends. Everyone is talking about it, and then the game launches, and yeah, and things usually go one way or another. They go well or they don't go well, for depending on what build you theory crafted or whatever, or the things that you discover. But the reason why there can always be intrigue and excitement in Path of Exile is because they add new items and uniques, and those cannot be data mined. They add new content and all of these things that then shapes the way that you have to play the game. And so it doesn't matter if you start at a certain build, it clicks with you, like, oh, but I can't play this build, I need to play something else that does this well, because that's the content that they released this league. Those are the things that you can never plan for, because of the fact that PoE just has these many variables and stuff like that. So yeah, the game will never be solved on day one with patch notes. So yeah, just taking that argument and throwing it out the window here, just dispelling it, because yeah.
I think I totally agree with that. And the other thing is, I always say this, but you can always glean how good a patch is by looking how often certain content creators put the best build in their first update videos, right? It's like the first week is basically new best build, new best build, new best build. It's like none of these are figured out, right? Like there is too many variables to kind of there's just too many variables. You cannot figure it out. So I guess it would be an issue if there was a PTR before, but everything just being done in your head a week before just generates a weird amount of hype, right?
100%.
So your guys' point about patch notes and this trickle down effect through all the different ecosystems, I completely agree with you on that. I feel it as well. It's palpable. Everyone's so excited. That makes me much happier to be a content creator. The only thing I'll add to that point that I think a lot of people either don't understand, or they can't imagine this, is that entire ecosystem. Us, the people that visit Maxroll, the people on Reddit, the people in the Discord, the people on YouTube, that is such a small slice of the pie.
Yeah,
it really is. Like, there are so many more players that just, they hear that a new update came out and then they just play it. So it's an amazing ripple effect. It's an amazing benefit to not only us but our entire ecosystem, absolutely. But a lot of people think that the world revolves around us and the people on the internet, when there's a much larger slice of the pie that has nothing to do with any of it. And the point I was trying to make is that demographic does not care when the patch notes come out. They don't even read them. They just
totally agreed. But at the same time, does it hurt those people if the patch notes come out? Like, they don't care either way, but as you would describe it, right? So
it doesn't hurt them in any way. No, the only way it hurts them is well, if it comes out. Here's the thing for me: if Grinding Gear Games releases the patch notes early, I think it's an amazing sign. You don't know why? It shows confidence, right? To me, it shows that the patch is ready. When it comes out the day before, when Mark says, "I'm literally working all day tirelessly. We're going to try to get the patch notes out tomorrow," I 1,000% appreciate the effort. I know they're putting their blood, sweat, and tears in it, but it does not inspire confidence to me in what's about to be released the following day. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. I actually sort of no, I might be completely oblivious or like wrong about this, but I sort of disagree because of like analyzing trends on ladders and stuff like that, and I think that has like it sort of like looks at the yeah, like it's still a sort of like a niche, like the ladders and stuff. But like you look at Pew Ninja, and 70% of Amazons are playing LS, right? So that I feel like to some extent you are right, but in Path of Exile, trends do have much more of a sort of like jump on type of effect in comparison to maybe other games because of the fact that the difference between the top and the bottom is so drastic. It'll make people seek the top, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And there's also probably other factors that are playing into here that might impact how the demographics shake out. For example, one, it's an early access. Some people just, especially more casuals, they just won't even play in early access because they don't want to like beta test a game. Um, and another thing is right now it's paid. And it will be free. And when it's free, all the PoE Giga Chads, how many of
They're all
them
logging
said,
in now.
I'll wait a year. I'll wait for it to be free. Literally none of them. They all
Yeah.
bought it. So like all the Giga Chads are here. They don't give a shit that it's early access. It's a little bit skewed, but yes, I agree with you. How does the slice of the pie look in Path of Exile? How many like blasters that research things versus Diablo? It's way more casual over there, obviously, no matter what.
Okay. Good point. If there is, I mean, that pretty much sums up everything I wanted to talk with you guys about. And I think like I really enjoyed this podcast and talking to you guys. So I appreciate you taking the time. But I don't know if there's any other topic. Literally, I did have one more question here, but maybe I didn't want to go too much into depth. So maybe it's just like a quick. If there was one thing that you could change right now, what would it be?
Put it in the auction house.
Make ascendancy stronger. Make ascendancy stronger, more distinctive, and give them more of a power curve and power boosts, and make them feel more unique.
So real quick on something that Palstron said about ascendancies. So Path of Exile is really liking PoE 2 more. They're really liking this they call it a kiss curse mechanic where you gain 50% damage but you lose 20% attack speed. I really don't feel like ascendancies are the place for that. Or if you do it, I think it should be massively in the player's favor. And the reason why is ascendancies are a little bit different from anything else. When you're gaining your regular passive points, you're just playing, right? No matter what you're doing, you're just gaining some XP. Okay, you get another point, you're moving around your tree. And ascendancy is you set up your little relics and you went and go and beat the trial of the Sekimas. Like you went and you did something and then you ascend. And then to have somebody sit there and look at their choices and not having it glaringly obvious that the next thing you're going to pick is going to be a big impact to you and your gameplay is such a bad feeling. I think that's one of the things that they should really, really completely change their attitudes on. I think the ascendancies should be buffed significantly.
Fair enough. I think there is this place for like these curse mechanics if the curse is also an upside if you look at it from a different angle, if that makes sense, which kind of like I feel
think
like
that should be
Infernalist
keystones,
sort of
right?
had that, right? I think
Yeah, keystones.
yeah, maybe. This is we could talk about this for hours amongst ourselves. That's true. So for me, I I'm much more of a simpler man. I want the noobs to have fun. Just give people alchemy orbs in the campaign, bro. That's what I want. You know, if you solve people's pain points, like where like you kill a monster and it drops loot, and that's how you like progress, that will solve the game for so many people. It would solve the game for so many. It will make what is already the best part about Path of Exile campaign better. Just kill the monster, drop the loot, cut out the middleman, this bench stuff. None of that, bro. Just give us shards that turn into orbs. Like you solved this issue 10 years ago. why not solve it again, bro? You know, that's my main thing, right? So, yo, thanks so much for joining me, guys. Like, you guys are the best guests. I appreciate you a lot. Had some really good discussion, and thank you to chat as well. It's everybody watching on YouTube. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and don't know when we'll have another one of these, so I'm not really gonna promise anything. But yo, thank you everybody, and I hope to see you guys again next time.
Wait.
Thanks, guys.